Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Do you feel like you've been trying to create the adventure of your lifetime, and that if you do enough things and do it quickly enough and pack your schedule with all kinds of stuff that you'd rather take your time and not do, but because you feel stressed and you've got to do it, and it makes it very tough for people, and predominantly women seem to be afflicted with this the most, because everybody seems to want you to be able to do everything all at the same time, and yourself ends up being last. Well, we've got a young lady here. Her name is Amanda Hess, and she's a coach, she's a podcaster, and she's also been through that. And I will venture to guess, and we haven't talked about it yet, but we will. I'd venture to guess that because of the experiences that she's had with that, she understands how it affects other people, and she is able to make it work for herself as well as the people that she coaches, and the people that are on her podcast. And we're even going to talk about a word that I have no earthly idea what it means. I've never heard it before, but we're going to talk about that. So, Amanda, first of all, hello. How are you today?
Hello, Kevin. I am amazing. Thank you so much. How are you today?
I'm also amazing. You see, I have this little show called Positive Talk. And so I can't ever be in a down mood, and I can't ever, because that's number one, that's not who I am. But number two, I've got to work in a world that is positive and is working to help other people get through some of the issues that they have, that they don't even know necessarily that they have them. It's just how my mom did it or my grandmother did it, and this is how I've got to do it. And it makes it very difficult for everybody. So I would like to start with, how did you get started with all of this? And tell us a little bit about your backstory.
So it's a long story, and I'll try to make it a short story.
That's all right. We got an hour.
I really struggled with myself and how I fit into the world for a really long time. And, it's funny, I was even coaching a client today, and I got kind of emotional on the call when I was talking to her about her son, who's 10. And we were just talking about his reactions to feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. And I could just really empathize with him, because for my entire life, I've been extremely sensitive. I feel emotion very strongly, whether that's nature or nurture. I'd say it's a little bit of both. Living in an authoritarian house where there was, sometimes some abuse, I think that it just developed. And so as I moved into adulthood and tried to do things right, the way that I really lived my life was almost in a performative way, and that I wanted to show up and do all the things and do it the right way, like be the right mother, be the right wife, be the right employee, do the things that the world expected. But because I put so much pressure on myself, I wouldn't really know how to handle the emotions that still came up, right? It's not like I became less emotional as I became an adult. And I found myself really bumping into myself, really struggling. And with the birth of my second child, what I found is that I was just completely unable to cope. And I had, I guess if you want to call it a nervous breakdown, I really lost it. And I remember walking home, I had decided to go to school with my kids. So I had a newborn, and I had a preschooler, and I had a big Great Dane, and it was a beautiful day. So as you do when you're not sleeping, you're like, you know what I should do? I should go walk to school with my little baby on my chest and with my preschooler, and I should bring my Great Dane. And I haven't had any sleep, but we're going to go do this together. And so went to school, dropped off my preschooler. My baby cried the whole time. Like, he cried the whole way to school. He cried the whole way home. And I was so overwhelmed. I just wanted to throw him, and it scared me so badly. I put him in his crib. I called my husband. I was completely unglued. He came home. I went and got, mental health support. I saw a therapist and I got put on an antidepressant. And it was ultimately what I needed at the time. It really was. But long term, it wasn't what I needed because it didn't really address what was going on for me, which is I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't regulating my nervous system. I didn't have any positive self talk. I was just living this very emotional life where I had a lot of negative judgment around myself. So being on an antidepressant really just made me very numb. And then another preschool story. I remember going to preschool, dropping off my son, and one of the other moms looks at me and she goes, "Oh, Amanda, I wish I was like you and I just didn't care about my appearance." And I was like, "What?"
Oh, thanks a heap.
So that made me just kind of go, like probably I should care about my appearance, and I definitely don't. So I went to my doctor who put me on a different antidepressant, and it just really didn't work. At the urging of a friend, I went to see a psychiatrist. When I saw the psychiatrist, he was like, "You're not depressed. You have a personality disorder." I was like, "What?" Like, so that went on over the span of years, right? And then the one good thing about having that diagnosis of a personality disorder is that he told me that antidepressants weren't the right fit for me. And so he put me in a type of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy. Um, it's got lots of good things. The issue I think with any therapy like that is really being able to institute it. If you look at the manual for it, it's enormous. It's like an atlas. It's huge. And I mean, how do you even know what to pick from there when you're emotionally struggling? There's just some real disconnects there, right? So fast forward several years later, I just sort of muddled my way through and I stumbled upon a marriage coach. And I saw this coach and I was like, maybe she can help me because I was really struggling in my marriage. I really was. And I knew I was a big piece of the puzzle. I knew I was emotionally reactive. I knew that there was something going on for me where I was very Jekyll and Hyde. I couldn't figure out how to like navigate that. And she was the very first person that I'd ever worked with that told me that how I was reacting made sense and that it was normal and that it's okay and there's a way through this and it's not by making you a different person or identifying yourself as a problem. Actually, like probably what you need is a much gentler touch, and you need someone to like see you and love you and affirm you and help you see things in a different way, in a different light. And it was such a change for me, and it changed my life entirely. It was such a small but monumental shift. And because of that experience with her, I just knew that I wanted to help other women do the same because I just feel like so many women right now and men, but I predominantly work with women. So many people struggle in this way. And if only they knew that they needed to be nicer to themselves.
There's so many of us that don't feel like that's even a possibility
Mhm.
within our lives because of so many things. But there's a lot there to unpack, Amanda. One is because of the newborn. Do you think postpartum depression played a role in that, and also you weren't getting any sleep and you were up all the time and stuff? Do you think that played a part in that as well?
So, yeah, I think it all plays a part. I think it's all an ecosystem. Our body, our brain, our emotions, they all work together. So, if you think about, I follow this researcher and she's been doing research specifically on women, which there's very little, by the way, and specifically on women's brains. And one thing that she came up with in her research, because she's a radiologist, is in doing scans of women's brains when they're pregnant. When we are pregnant, we don't grow brain cells at all.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, nobody did. She like literally just discovered it in the last several years. And so when people talk about baby brain, it's like, yeah, there's baby brain, like from the standpoint of so much going on and hormonally, but also we're not growing brain cells when we're pregnant. And that goes on postpartum as well. I can't remember how many months postpartum that goes on. So that is for sure, like your brain is actually physically different. when you're pregnant and when you have the baby. And I think it plays a role. And then you think about not sleeping. I mean, that's a form of torture that they use in the world.
It is. It is. And they keep you up for 24, 48. But when you when you're a new mom and you're feeding and you're doing all that, and it's every 2 hours,
Mhm.
and whether you like it or not, it's every 2 hours. And I know your significant other tries to help, but there's only so much they can do, and stuff. But it makes it, hearing your story makes it really, really important that you now have come out the other side and you're recognizing that you weren't alone, that there's a lot of people that have are going through that, and
Yeah.
that now you're in a position to be able to help people. And that is the coolest thing in the world. And congratulations for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It is like a beautiful gift to be able to come out and be able to help people in that way. It really is just the most amazing thing. I think that it's worth going through all the pain and heartache to be able to help people and have them not continue on and on that painful path.
Explain to me something that I don't get. And it's not because I'm a guy, but it's just not in my makeup. Why is it that some people will just they pack their schedule with so many things that they never have time to relax, reflect, and be by themselves, or to just relax a little bit? They got the kids, they've got the baseball, the soccer, I mean, some of that stuff is insidious with how much time commitment it takes. Why do people put themselves through that?
I think it's like a two-part question or a two-part answer, I guess I should say. The first part of it is I think it's like ingrained in our culture that we must be productive at all times. And because of that, when people aren't productive, when they're not physically doing something, they feel lazy. It feels like they're doing something wrong. It doesn't feel right. And in fact, that stillness is unsettling because they're so used to having that anxious energy all the time. I think the other part of it is that when you are alone and you are just relaxing, it's not relaxing if you feel like you can't stop thinking about all the things that are wrong with you in your life.
How come we don't forgive ourselves for that? I mean, some we tend to look at it like, I'm not doing something right, but in
Mhm.
fact, you are doing something right by being still.
Well, our brains do have a negative bias, right? So the way that we're built is to look for danger. That is our survival brain at its finest. And if you think about like our culture right now and the way that we live and the way that we perform in the world, if you even look at just how much we have to process, if you think about having your computer, your phone, your tablet, the news at your doorstep, all your friends doing all these things, an app for every sport that your kid is in, work, having remote work. We process now way more information than we did even 20 years ago. So the emotional processing that we have to do is intense. And when we find ourselves struggling, when we find ourselves not being able to keep up, and I coach on this all the time, we will get into this stress response where we're in fight, flight, freeze all the time. We are just cycling through it. And we don't even know that we're cycling through it. So, what happens is we have a little spare time. We start thinking, oh my gosh, I have to do this. I have to do that. I forgot about this. I forgot about that. And the panic starts inciting more action. Like one of the pieces of homework that I give almost everyone is that I want them to stop writing lists because lists they're horrible for your brain because what they do is they make you think that everything that you wrote down has to get done and that it's all equal in importance and it isn't. And so we just get so backwards because we're always in this response of looking for danger, trying to solve for the danger, do, go, 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 that we don't realize that slowing things down, processing, giving yourself the space to be able to reset your nervous system is actually what's going to make you feel better, not getting all the things done.
Do we attempt to get all the things done because we think people will love us more if we get everything done and we are perfectly, it's it's kind of like Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. If
Mhm.
if we think that we are more loved by doing that, and that if we don't, and if we step back a little bit, that we're going to be loved less, or we're going to be needed less. What's the thought process that goes on there? Do you know?
Well, I do think that we're all on a struggle for worth. We all want to prove our worth. And I think that really what actually is happening is we're trying to get it all done because we're chasing feeling better. So we want to feel better. So we feel like we think that if I get all of this done, then I can relax, that that's what's required to relax. And what you don't realize is that when you look at yourself emotionally, most of us don't have a really good emotional vocabulary. So I feel good, I feel bad, I feel anxious, I feel sad, I feel angry, but we don't get into the nuance of that emotion. Like, I feel defeated, I feel shame, right? Like, really specific flavors of emotion. Because when we start understanding ourselves emotionally, we can start understanding how we're receiving the world. And then when we do, we can start making some different decisions on what we want to believe, which is going to change the result. So I'm always results focused in my coaching, and that I'm like, there's not a good thought or a bad thought. There's just thoughts. And some of them are going to create things you want, and some of them are not. And we want to be aware of it. But most people are very unaware because we're scared of what we think, because a lot of the thoughts that we're thinking, we think are true. We think they're all true.
It is the stories that we tell ourselves, isn't it? Is so divisive for each of us, because we are. I went to, and I have said this before. I went 20 years because a 6-year-old child said something to me that was unkind. And I thought for 20 years that that 6-year-old child knew better than me. And so I deserved to be what he said. And that's not true at all. But,
Mhm.
and he was a 6-year-old kid. But we all do that. We incorporate all these things, or like in your regimented family situation, if a situation came up and you took it on as it being real, and it oftentimes wasn't real. And a lot of times the people that even said these things don't even remember that they said them, but you took them into your soul, and they've become part of you. And and then years later you say, do you remember when you said? Oh no, I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's amazing how we do that, isn't it?
It is. I think that things that really hurt us or that confirm something that we're afraid of about ourselves can really cut deep. And, people will talk about healing trauma. And I honestly just, I don't know. I look at trauma differently. I look at trauma as kind of a lot like the way that I look at grief, and that we grow around trauma because it really did hurt us. And, when we think back to being told that thing, I think we can always identify with that feeling of hurt. Like, it's so there. It's so visceral and it's so accessible even as we age. So to me, it's more about, yeah, growing that voice that has your back, being like, you know what, Amanda, you know what, Kevin, you're like a really good person. You're incredible, actually. You offer the world so much. Being able to say that to yourself in an authentic way and grow that side of your brain is going to be what's going to give you the balance rather than trying to get rid of the negative thoughts. This is my thoughts, right? Like, you can totally disagree, but I find getting rid of negative thoughts or fighting with them, what ends up happening is it's like you're having a fight with a big dog, and he's got a rope and he's like, hey, want to play tug of war? And you're like, yeah. And you grab the rope and you always lose.
Because it's a big dog. And big dogs are pretty powerful little people. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
at least in my world. I think you are so right. By the way, we're talking with Amanda Hess. Go to her website, which is amandahess.ca. Are you from Canada?
Canada, that's me.
Well, we love our friends to the north, because you're such a good person. It's we we I really appreciate all the people that I've met from Canada. They are, you all, not everybody, I suppose, but the people I've met are very, very grounded and stuff. And by the way, there are women that are listening to this going, you know, I, Amanda she's well spoken, she's smart, she's pretty, she's got it all together. They wouldn't have thought, regardless of what they're going through now, or if they're going through a tough time now, they would never think that, boy, she went through it. She went through the war and she came out the other side. I need to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about your experiences in life and how all of them can be used in a positive way to really take you from, and I think that they're predestined, preordained. They can take you from where you were to where you want to go, but you wouldn't be able to get there without some of those experiences. So we're talking with Amanda Hess. You are phenomenal, by the way. I just want to tell you that you are really cool, and I want to thank you for being here. So
Thank you, Kevin.
we will be right back after this.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We have a great guest for you today. If you love a woman, or if you are a woman, or you know a woman, you need to be listening to this podcast and radio show, because she is a coach. She has her own podcast. She has dedicated her life to helping other people after she's gone through what she's gone through and the experiences that she's had. She came out the other side. Not to say that everything is rainbow and sunshine every day, but you're working hard to make it work for you and for the people that you work with and coach. And you really are something. And you are, would you trade any of the experiences that you had up until now? Because they have, in my frame of reference, they have kind of made you who you are today. Would you wish for anything else other than the life that you've had?
I mean, honestly, the answer is no. Um, there's a life coach, Byron Katie. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She writes
Oh
books.
yes. Oh yes.
Okay. I love her work, and I love some of the things she says. And one of the things that she says is everything happened exactly the way that it was supposed to happen because it happened.
Yes.
And then the other thing she says is when you argue with reality, you always lose, but only 100% of the time.
I'm not a math quiz, but I suspect that means all the time.
Mm.
Um,
So yeah, no, in saying that, I mean, have there been really painful things that have gone on in my life? I've lost my mom, which was really awful, and, gone through really tough times for sure. Although, I mean, I've had the honor of witnessing other people's stories and recognize in so many ways I was so blessed, actually. Um, I think that I'm grateful for the person that I am now. I think that it makes a difference and that our pain does form us and it does create who we are. And when we can bring it closer, not in a like snuggling your wubby kind of way, but in a it's okay. I'm okay. I can move forward from this place and I can keep going and I can be really kind to this part of myself that struggles and that really, needs more time and needs more space and needs more care than maybe you even want to give it. Um, you can grow and you can have really incredible relationships and have a really incredible experience of your life.
I had a conversation with a young lady who's a really good friend of mine, uh, just about an hour and a half ago. And she was talking about the fact that this is what she does. Her pattern in life is she'll be involved, and then whoosh, poof, she disappears. And it's like, yeah, I sent you a message 10 days ago. You never responded to that. And and so we had a conversation about that. And she said, it's part of my makeup that I have a hermit thing. And because now keep in mind that she's got 7 kids that live at home with her and a boyfriend and all that. So she's very, very busy. And so occasionally she just needs to ghost people and to just kind of go away a little bit, but she knows enough about herself to appreciate it and not to say, "Oh, this is a bad thing," but this is what this human being in this suit needs today, and it makes sense for her. And we all need to do that, but a lot of times we need a coach. We need somebody like you who can help somebody understand that no, you're not bad, you're not awful, it's just the way you are. Now let's see if we can work on that and make it work for you in a positive way. And that's kind of some of the coaching that you do, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that's a lot of what I do. I mean, when I talk about, when I'm coaching someone and I'm explaining coaching, I do think about it from the standpoint of, and this is very general, okay? Because, like in therapy, a lot of times what you're doing is you're healing. You are working on healing who you are, healing your experience, healing yourself emotionally. You're trying to, I don't want to say fix, but to an extent, fix what went on for yourself. And with coaching, I think that the really big difference, at least the style of coaching I do, is I already assume you're fully whole. Like, I think you're all perfect already, and that we don't need to fix you, that we can work with what you've got. And yeah, for some of us, it's harder. It just is. It's true. I have a harder time with emotions. I have a harder time with my past trauma. And when it pops up, I have to process that emotion. I have to regulate my nervous system. I have to take time and space. I do have to just disengage. And I know that about myself. And yet, because I know what to do when that shows up, I can get through it quicker and in a healthy way that feels good for me. And I still get to do the things I want to do. Like, I can still run my business. Not always easy being an entrepreneur, right? You sometimes bump into things where you're like, this really sucks. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Especially when you've got this thing where you want to ghost people every now and again. And it's like you can't step away from somebody that you've made a commitment to. And
yeah, ghosting clients is not a good idea. I mean,
it's not safe. No. It's not good for your business either. Um,
no.
but Amanda, I say in the opening, and I don't know if you caught it, but we were born great. I
Mhm.
believe every human being is perfect just the way that they are. But so many times we spend the rest of our lives from the time that we're born forward with people telling us, "Hey, you ain't so great. You got this going on and you got that, and you're not all that in a bag of chips." And we have to get over that because we are all great just as we are. But sometimes the stories become so pervasive and so deeply held that it requires somebody from the outside to say, you ain't as bad as you think you is.
It's true. And I also want to offer that it is really woven into the fabric of the life that we live that we're not good enough. I mean, I actually love social media, and in so many ways, it has, I think, increased the value of our life. However, I'm very, very careful. I curate what I consume on social, and I'm careful to not pull things in that make me feel bad about myself or even a person. Like, if I'm friends with somebody on Facebook and they are making me feel bad about myself, I don't really think that much about it other than muting them because I recognize that, like, that's not for me. But I even like, I'll tell this story. I don't know if I should, but I'm going to tell it anyways. I
If you should, you should. That's good.
I was in a business mastermind that I joined in on, and it was a huge investment. It was more money that I'd ever invested in anything. Like, it cost more than my car. Like, it was a lot of money. Okay. And in that mastermind, I was getting coached by the coach. And I was saying that I thought that one of the things that was unique about me and my coaching was how good of a coach I am for my people. And she looked at me and said, everyone here is a good coach. That's not what you should be focusing on. And I received that as like, oh, you're not that good of a coach, right? And it really shut me down. And I will say, even like, I've always believed that I'm a good coach, but I've never believed, I guess, after that time that I could lead with that and I could tell people, you know what, actually, I'm really talented at this. And it's wild how I can even be a coach and have gone through this process, but like had somebody say something to me and taken it in, that's still wrong, as the truth.
I get what you mean. And, sometimes being a human, it's nice to say the wrong word and mean it because, nobody's perfect. But if you can laugh at yourself and stuff, anyway. So go ahead. I love what you're saying.
Yeah, that's really it, right? I just think that the world is good or bad, no matter which way you look at it, because you can find the good and you can find the bad. That's true. And we want to be careful. We want to give our brain a good job to do. And a good job to do is looking for how life is great, because then you feel a lot better, which gives you a lot more like positive action, which is going to create a lot more results, which is why positive thinking is well known as being an amazing tool, right?
Yep.
What I do find, though, at the same time is recognizing that sometimes what other people say to us is toxic, and we can just let it go and be like, wow, that was actually really awful that coach said that to me. And that was really terrible coaching. And I would never coach somebody like that. And just let that be true and then move on and decide what you want to believe about you.
That takes a bit of work to be able to get that done. And we're going to talk about that when we come back. We're also going to talk about this word that I have no earthly idea what it means. And you're going to tell us what it means because it happened to you years ago. And we're talking with Amanda Ness, and she is Amanda Hess, pardon me. Go to amandahess.ca because she's in Canada, don't you know? And we need to take a station break, and we will be right back with more. We're going to talk about neurodivergent. I have no earthly idea. It sounds like a detergent, but we'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We've got an amazing guest. She's an awesome coach. Her name is Amanda Hess. She's also a podcaster, which you I don't know about you, but I always get a little tense around other podcasters because, you want to make sure that you're doing right and doing a good job and stuff. And so I don't know, how am I doing? You doing okay?
You're doing an amazing job. I was thinking like, I should just get Kevin to produce my podcast.
I tell you, I love what I do. I love talking to people like you. I love talking to other podcasters, and because as you and I both know, being a podcaster is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, and some are really good, and some are new and learning. But it's all. I think everybody's got the desire and the design to really make a difference in the world. And that's what your podcast is all about. But before we go talk about your podcast, which we're going to, I want to talk about tell me, what is it? I'd probably
Yeah, you're
mispronounce
saying it right. Neurodivergent. Yeah. So here's the thing. Neurodivergent is just a term that refers to people who ultimately believe their brain works differently than what the world is set up for. So there's many different people that have many different ideas about neurodivergence. It's not a diagnosis. It's more like an identifier in that, hey, the way that my brain works and wants to do this isn't necessarily in line with how the neurotypical sort of world wants it to be. And so it's kind of like if you went to school and you were the kind of learner that liked to walk around and, maybe verbally process and move your hands and do whatever. But the teacher's like, you have to sit in your desk and you're not allowed to move. And then you can't really do well in school because that's not how you learn well. I think it's a lot like that. So a lot of times it'll be people that are diagnosed or not diagnosed, but that identify with having something like ADHD, autism. It also refers to things like dyslexia. But it's, in my definition, it can also be mental health diagnoses, or diagnoses, I guess is how you say it. It really is just, some people really identify that the way that they need to do things for their brain means that it's going to require more work. That's sort of how I look at it.
That's really is a difficult thing for somebody whose brain operates in a certain way and it's not considered mainstream or normal. And they're having to deal with their brain and versus the normal people's brain, quote unquote normal, and stuff. That must be very, very difficult. And you can't really nobody, I had never heard that term before. So it's not something that it's not saying I'm neurodivergent and so can you help me? It's like they have no earthly idea what the hell you're talking about and stuff. So it makes it has to make it really tough for those people who operate at a different frequency or a different way, doesn't it?
It does. And, I will say that I think there are a lot of people in this world that could use that term. I always look at something like a label, like neurodivergent, because it's a label, right? You can use it for yourself to help yourself. If it feels like home for you, it feels like a place where you're like, oh, this makes things make sense for me. And now I can attack this from a different place versus, oh my gosh, I'm just different and my life's going to suck forever. And I might as well just lie in bed and never get out. You know what I mean?
Don't comb your hair, don't brush your teeth, all of those things
Exactly.
that you might do. But you see, the thing is, on something like that there's somebody in our audience right now, Amanda, that is going, that's me. Nobody's ever said anything like that to me before. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're educating somebody here about that particular thing. So can you go in a little bit more in depth on that and some of the ways that it presents itself in the world?
Yeah. So I think that, I can speak to what I see in myself and in my clients. And what I would say is that you might have a lot of anxiety, right? So you might wake up anxious, be anxious all day long, go to bed anxious, wake up in the middle of the night anxious, wake up and start it all over again. And you might believe that that is because there is something wrong with you. But I actually believe that it probably has more to do with you not learning how to handle what's going on for you emotionally. And so if you think about you being neurodivergent and you not being able to necessarily process everything that's coming in for whatever reason, because there could be a million reasons, then you can start to uncover what is really wrong, like diagnose what is really happening here. And oftentimes it is because we have fear. Like fear is a big driver for a lot of people, right? Fear of not being good enough, fear of not being smart enough, fear of not being able to be loved, fear of not fitting in, fear of our parents not, truly loving and accepting us. So many fears. And when fear drives, we just try to sort of, when we were talking about that busyness addiction, right? Where it's like, go, 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 do, 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 do. When we're experiencing that, I have noticed in every single person that I've ever coached that underneath that is fear. And so when we start breaking it down, we do start to realize that there's been a lot of life experiences where you've been told that how you are is a problem. And it usually starts in childhood and it continues as we grow. And we just start to realize, like, oh my God, I need to hide this from the world. Nobody can know that I'm different. I need to be the same. And so that drives our life and it drives everything we do, but it disconnects us from ourselves. And eventually it breaks.
And it makes it really, really difficult for you to break out from that, because you're not getting any of the positive experiences that you might have in order to see that there's something else going on here, or that you're doing something extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
My mother was really good at this. She was okay. Freud says your mom. Okay, I get it. But she what she used to do would be like, if in sports or in schoolwork or whatever, she said, "You really did a great job at this, but you could have done this better. You could have done this better." And so it got to the point where I discounted, "You did a really great job at this." And I took in the "but" part, "but you could have done better at this." And so I interpreted that to mean, she has to say I do good because she has to, but what she really means is I sucked at it, and so I must really suck at everything. And so it, even though she, in God bless her, was trying to do the right thing and give me a compliment, she couldn't just shut up and leave it there. She had to throw the "but" in with that. And I think that happens to a lot of us. And so we have a negative interpretation of what people tell us.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's even philosophies out there, like especially in coaching employees, where you kind of deliver it in a sandwich, where it's like, give a compliment and then put the real thing that you want to say to them in the middle and then end with a compliment. And I'm like, this is not cool. That is not how coaching needs to work. Really, I believe that when if you really want to help somebody, and they've done something that you have a problem with, you're much better off, first of all, tapping into love for that person, but also tapping into curiosity and asking them and asking yourself, why is this even important to me? Right? Why does this matter to me? Why is this like an issue for me?
Yeah. Well, and have you ever gotten somebody that was mean to you that you didn't even like, but you took it in anyway?
Oh, it happens all the time. It happens online to me.
and we don't sometimes, and I'm getting better at this. I've been around the planet a little bit longer than you, probably a lot longer than you, and so I'm getting to the point now where it doesn't matter, because it's none of my business what you think of me. And if you think I do a crappy job at doing this, well, okay, fine. If you think I'm a lousy person, well, that's your problem. It has nothing to do with me, and stuff. But I had to become a bus driver to learn that.
Well, I drove a school bus for
That.
like a while. Yeah.
You know what that I would never drive a school bus. Just for those of you that are wondering what the difference between I drove a city bus, and what the difference between that and a school bus is. The school bus says you have to deal with bodily fluids like puke and blood and all that. No, can't do that. But I call somebody, but congratulations on doing that, by the way. That's great that you did that.
That was an insane time of my life. I'm going to tell you, I had my oldest, who's now 17, was like a year old. In Canada, we have a year maternity leave. So I was working as a financial analyst for a relatively large company. And when I came back to work, it wasn't really working. My son kept getting ear infections. I wasn't sleeping. I was very nervous about my son being in childcare to begin with. We had a really bad experience with our first childcare situation. Ended up coming home with a bloody face, bad experience. And so I just couldn't do it anymore. And I remember quitting my job, and my husband was so against it because at the time he was making quite a lot less than me. And so the reason why I drove a school bus is to help gap the income, because me staying home was like a no for kind of what was going on for him, and then also financially. So they sold it to you that you could bring your kid on the bus. So my 1-year-old, right? So a school bus, just to know, like, this is in Canada. It's cold here. And you're driving in the winter, and it is, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's minus 20 degrees Celsius, which I think is actually pretty close to minus 20 Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken. It's cold. And they would cold start the buses, but the buses were ancient, first of all, so old. So half the time they didn't work properly. They're diesel, so they don't run warm anyways. So you can't get any heat out of them. So I'd have to get on the bus early and press on the gas to get the heat going. And then because these buses were built in California, the heaters would always break in the back. Meanwhile, I've got my son strapped into a seat. And then it was like 17 years ago. So I had this little DVD player that I strapped to the front of the seat. And then I would play Mickey Mouse Clubhouse for him. And then I would drive the bus, and I'd have all these kids getting on, and all this crazy stuff would be going on. My bus would get stuck. It was insane.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, it is. Yeah, but I had the added entertainment of having people like pour a beer down my fare box and that kind of thing. But and we had to call medic a couple of times for people that were having an overdose on the bus and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah. I did have kids that would come on. I started driving teenagers because I decided I didn't like driving little kids. Teenagers were so much worse. And so they'd come on, they'd have spits, like sunflower seeds and a 2-liter bottle of pop. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like,
well, and by the way, we're talking with Amanda Hess, saying go to her website, please, amandahess.ca, because she's from Canada. And by the way, I wanted to just to mention, this is not a political statement in any way, shape, or form, but in Canada, when you have a baby, they recognize that you need a year off. And in the United States, you get, I don't know, you're going to have the baby at 9. Okay, go ahead and take lunch. And then if you can be back by 3, that would be great. That's how we roll here in the great US of A. And I think that we'd be much better off if moms and even dads, depending if they could take some excessive time off, because it's raising children is hard. And especially with postpartum and other things, and it can be a very difficult thing, and it takes time. So given that, but we're talking with Amanda and your podcast. What on earth would get you to decide to do a podcast? I know somebody probably told you. They said, "Oh, but Amanda, you're so smart. You've got a great thing. You can interview people, and it would be a great podcast. And by the way, you're going to make $1 million because it's going to be really, really popular, and people are going to come to you, and you're going to sell stuff, and people are going to want to." And then you got into it. It's like, what the hell? Nobody's here.
I was so lucky the way I started my podcast, because actually my business coach at the time was like, don't start a podcast. This is getting in the way of you signing clients. Like, this is a project that you don't need. And it was 2020, 2021. I should know, but it was, right kind of in the middle of COVID. And I just was like, well, I'm just going to make it easy. So I'm not going to make it complicated. So when I started my podcast, it was a solo podcast. It's just me talking. And I hired a guy that did my intro and outro for me, and he showed me how to edit it on like whatever he was using, Ophonic or something like that. And I just started doing it. I never edit it. I didn't edit a single thing. I just go on and talk. But what was wild is I would offer, and I still do offer, free strategy sessions for people to get on a call with me, and we'll talk about what's going on and I'll help you with the strategy of what to do moving forward. And people would book calls from all over the world, from like Africa. And so I have had the most incredible feedback about my podcast. People tell me that they listen to it every day, that they listen to episode after episode when they're feeling down. And, I found clients that I've worked with through that podcast. So for me, like, I think the biggest worry I had is that I was going to put it out in the world and nobody was going to listen to it. But
Well,
that's not what happened.
you've done a really fabulous job. And by the way, I just have to say, the couple of people that you mentioned that were coaches of yours, they gave you some really crappy advice. Because being a professional like you are and doing what you can do, and doing a podcast and having guests come on and talk about their issues and stuff like that, that is a really winning formula, and that will help your coaching business as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it to be it's one of my favorite things in my business, to the point where I started doing a private podcast, like a daily podcast for my clients, where it's just, like 5 to 7 minutes, but just helping them like put a little Amanda in their brain every day.
That can be so beneficial to so many people. Everybody, all of us need a moment or two to take in our lives, so where we can sit back, relax, and take something positive in. And which is why I do this show, because it's important to have people like you on who are positive in nature. Yes, you've gone through what I like to call my bad country music song period, um, which I had that, but still, at the end of the day, I get to have the best time talking to some of the best people on the planet. AmandaHess.ca is where you go. I need to take a quick break, and then we've got our final segment with Amanda. And I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we're going to have fun, whatever it is. And we'll be right back.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at activeforlife.ca.
See, that was activeforlife.ca. See, that was a Canadian commercial. I thought I'd play that just for you. So, Amanda, you've gone through some times, and you're now a coach. You're helping people on a daily basis. What's the future hold for you?
I mean, honestly, that's a great question. I was thinking about this today. I pulled a card, which I don't normally pull cards anymore. I did that for a while, and then it didn't really speak to me, but I pulled this card. I went to Hawaii, and this artist had these cards, and I love them. And the card says, "I welcome in a new beginning." And I loved that message today. I think that for me, it's, I think just running my life, and I mean that from from the standpoint of my marriage, parenting, my friendships, all of those things, but also my business, from a place where it feels connected and grounded and feels like the extension of myself that I want to offer in those spaces. So, moving forward in my life, I just think more of the same, because it's pretty great and I'm pretty lucky.
You and me both, sister. You and me both. Now, I did want to ask you, if you were to go back at yourself 10 years ago and think about where you were then, or maybe 15 years ago, and think about where you are today, if you would go back to that person, would you believe what you are today could possibly have happened?
No, absolutely not. 10 years ago, I would have been 38. My mom would be dying of brain cancer, and I would be really struggling. and having a really hard time and just really not knowing where I was going. So I think that the one thing that I think is really important for everyone to know, honestly, and something that I talk to my clients about a lot is that you can be okay right now. You can put your hand on your chest. You can take a couple deep breaths. You can ground yourself in nature, listen to the birds, smell the air, feel your ground, like feel the ground under your feet. And just remind yourself that this moment right here matters as much as any other moment, and that you are going to be able to figure things out.
And what's going on today is not indicative of the person that you can become tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that.
It takes some work. Nothing is easy or free, but I can tell you this is you will be the person that, well, as an example, well, a couple things. First of all, I can do the math, and there is no way that you are as old as you say you are.
Well, trust me. I 100% am.
but that's the other thing is that there's so many people that go. I had a young lady that I was talking to. She's 25. She's had tons of difficulties in her life, and I said, "I want you to do me a favor." And she said, "Sure." And I said, "I want you to go into your room, close the door, and I want you to just sit there quietly, and I want you to picture yourself as a 45-year-old woman, the woman that you're going to become, and then I want you to plan for that, understanding that you've had a tough life." There was abuse. And won't go into it, but there's all sorts of stuff. Your life can be anything that you want it to be. So know that and take that in and really believe it because it's true. And don't let anybody tell you differently. And so go find a coach, find a good coach. Like we discussed earlier, it's like a box of chocolates. There are good ones and there are not so good ones. But you are a great coach. Go to our podcast, which, by the way, the podcast name is
How to Love Yourself No Matter What.
How to Love Yourself No Matter What, because you deserve to love yourself.
You do.
And if you don't love yourself, nobody else is going to love you. So that's so important. We've just got a minute left, Amanda. Would you come back and see me again?
I would love that. That would be so fun. I've loved this conversation so much.
Let's plan on that, because there are people in our audience that are saying they got some things going on. They can help me. And so, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go? I give you the microphone. You have your own. So you.
Well, what I would say is that, first of all, listen to this podcast. It's clear Kevin has amazing guests. He himself has a really great story. Anytime that you can plant in your brain seeds of hope and positivity and opportunity, plant them. And those people that do drag you down, those people that don't believe in you, you've got to mute them. And if you don't know how to do that, you should get support through a therapist or a coach to learn how to think differently and how to really advocate for yourself, because you do deserve that. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect. And you can move forward through this no matter what.
Again, we've been talking with Amanda Hess. Go to her website, which is amandahess.ca. And I'm sure that your podcast can be found in all the podcast places. And I really appreciate you being here. And just remember to take care of each other and take care of yourselves. And that's all we can ask. And I really appreciate someone like you coming on here, because you're living your best life.
Yeah, I am.
And that is a gift that I wish that I could give everybody on the planet. But it's not a gift that I can give you. It's a gift that you can give yourself. Thank you. And if you wait right there, I'll be right back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.